To prevail on a claim of negligence, a plaintiff must prove the defendant owed him a duty of care, that the defendant breached that duty of care, and that the defendant was both the actual and proximate cause of the plaintiff's damages. Okay, let's talk actual cause. Actual cause is the cause in fact or but for cause. So we have three theories. One, we have one defendant, but for the defendant's actions, the plaintiff would not have been injured. But for the defendant's actions, the plaintiff would not have been injured. So next up, substantial factor. One defendant was a substantial factor in causing the injury. Defendant was a substantial factor. So we can say a person was the actual cause or a substantial factor. So for causation, our rule is a plaintiff must prove the tortfeasor was the actual or cause in fact of the plaintiff's injury, or that the defendant was a substantial factor in causing that injury. Let's repeat that. For causation, the plaintiff must prove, for actual cause, the plaintiff must prove the defendant was the cause in fact, but for the defendant's actions, the plaintiff would not have been injured, or the defendant's conduct was substantial factor in causing the injury. Finally, we have alternative liability. Two independent tortfeasors may each be held liable for the full extent of the plaintiff's injury if it is impossible to tell which tortfeasor caused the plaintiff's injuries. This is our Summers versus Tice, alternative liability. Two or more independent tortfeasors may each be held liable for what? The full extent of the plaintiff's injury if it is impossible to tell which tortfeasor caused the plaintiff's injury. And then what happens to the burden of proof? Oh yes, the burden of proof will shift to the defendants to show their negligence did not cause the injury. The burden of proof will shift to who? The defendants, to show their negligence didn't cause the injury, to show they weren't the cause. It is not to apportion the damage among themselves. That is for the judge to decide. Don't use that. Okay, so here's our full causation rule script, just actual cause. Actual cause, meaning the but-for cause. Actual cause means, actual cause, the plaintiff must prove that but for the defendant's actions, the plaintiff would not have been injured, or that the defendant's conduct was a substantial factor in causing the injury. Let's try that once more. The plaintiff must prove the defendant was the actual or but-for cause, but for the defendant's actions, the plaintiff would not have been injured, or the defendant's conduct was what? That's right, a substantial factor in causing the injury. When we've got more than one tortfeasor, we go to our alternative liability rule. Here it is. When two independent tortfeasors create an injury, they may each be held liable for the full extent if it is what? Impossible to tell which tortfeasor caused it. And then the burden of proof shifts to the defendant to show their negligence didn't cause the injury.